Alright, Junkyard charger main bearings. Alright, that was a pain in the ass because the bolt wouldn't come off. I had to cut the bolt. But anyways, it's all scarry. So you take your cap off, you get your bearings off and all that. It's all scarred up. Take brake clean, non-detergent. Clean the fuck out of it. I need 2 hands to use rag, so be back in a sec with that. Alright, after you spray it, you wipe it down with a rag to get all the wonderful grease and gunk and crap off of it that's loose, which you know, there's that. Oh, take you a piece of emery cloth. This is 320. Cut it to your length, which really you don't cut it, you just tear it. And if it's too wide, you just tear it down the side. The reason you use this is because this grit bonds to this stuff and stays instead of putting little fibers of junk in your freaking engine. Take a piece of tape. V-Rut vac. Put the masking tape on there with a little tab hanging off so you can tape it back on itself. Then you take and fish it in. So I'll show you that. Fish it in around, tape it back on itself. Then you take, oh, there ain't no room underneath here, a shoestring, and you fish it around twice, and I'll show you what that looks like. And you fish your little fishing string or shoestring over it, going around twice, not overlapping. And then normally I do this with 2 hands. This might not work with 1. Basically, you pull on one and it pulls up and then pull down and that, and then you keep working it. And you work it from this angle and back over this angle, and you just keep sawing it back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. And eventually, you know, you take the tape off, you look, see if it's smoothed up. If it ain't, you keep trucking. And if you wear the sandpaper out before it ever smooths out, then well, it's probably a lot worse than you should be fixing like this. But this ain't a guaranteed fix. This is a maybe. Actually, it's an experiment. I'll show you more when I get this part sanded. Be back in a sec. All right, when you get the sanding did, you check it out. If it's smooth enough for you, then it ain't perfect. It's a lot smoother than it was. It ain't got no grabby bits. Like I said, this is more of a test than it is the actually best way to do this. Best way is actually pull the crank out and replace the rods or recondition the rods and all that crap. I'm not doing that because I don't really care shit about this engine. I just want it to last a little while for the hell of it. Alright, then take your brake clean again. Spray it down. Take your rag and clean it again. I know these red rags are not the best thing to use in an engine because little fibers come off, and next thing you know, you're freaking knit a little sweater inside your engine. But honestly, the bearings will probably spin way before that'll happen. All right, back in a sec. Now remember, you also have to clean your cap and your rod with brake clean. You know, I'll show you this one. And a rag. You know, get all the crap off of it. One sec. Now you can watch a bunch of different YouTube videos, and this is where it gets a little different, because a lot of people can do all this shit. Everybody does it. This is the experiment part. This is shellac, and I'm shellacking the bearings in. I ain't sure if that's going to work. It may cause it to go out quicker, but it's a junk engine and it's a play toy aspect. Plus I'm using, you know, assembly lube. Since these bearings have a small hole here, and I don't want the shellac to get on the slidey part, and I don't want the slidey stuff to get on the slack part, I'm going to take a small piece of this tape and cover that hole, and I'm going to shellac them in. I'm not saying do this. Now in later videos, we'll see how long this lasts. Honestly, this might actually work really well, and it might be a good way to go about it. But until I post a video later on this, I don't think you should do it. So look at my other videos in the future that see how long this actually lasts. It may not. Back a sec. Okay, you put a thin layer of the shellac on the bearing with that little piece of tape over the hole. And then you make sure you line your little notches up. With the little notch on the little knock up on the bearing, which is right here. And I'm gonna get shellac all over me trying to show you this. Yeah. Back in a sec. Alright. You get the little notch in the right location and all that. And if anything oozes out the sides, clean it up. Do the same thing with the other rod. Shellac it with the tape and everything, because all these have little holes. And I'll be back in just a sec. Alright, put the assembly lube shit on your finger. Rub it all over the bearing. Well, run it all over the crank, bearing surface, and all that crap. And back to you in a sec. Alright, and after you lubricate thoroughly, put the cap on, put the bolts in, go ahead and torque it to the recommended torque aspect, and then leave it for at least 8 to 24 hours to fully cure under pressure before you bother trying to turn it. So most engines will allow you to do at least 2 at a time. So do 2, wait, do 2, wait, do 2, wait. You know, you can rotate after it's cured. I don't know if this is going to work, but it's a hell of a try. And honestly, this engine don't mean shit to me. Alright. Back in a bit, I guess. Like I said, after you torque it, leave it sit for the shellac to cure up on it for you. And then you can rotate. So far, I haven't noticed any issues with the tape taking up too much bearing clearance to a issue. It may be an issue, I don't know yet. This is an experiment. I keep telling you that because it's an experiment. You know, it's a test to see if the shellac would actually do good at holding the bearing. And 2, most people say you can't fix these damn things when it does this. At the best, it's always considered a temporary. That basically you might get a little bit. Most people I know and talk to, the best anyone's ever gotten out of this is a few weeks, maybe a month. I'm trying for 6 months. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but this is the best information I can gather together to possibly do this. And the shellac aspect is my idea, because the way I look at it, the way it functions, the reason why it slips is oil gets underneath the bearing. The bearing is only held in pretty much by the friction of it against the metal. And if the crank grabs, because there ain't that cushion of oil for it to float on, and it slides the bearing enough to get enough little oil underneath it, and it's going to spin on the outside instead of the inside, which is not the way it's supposed to work. And eventually it'll eat shit. By putting the shellac there, it keeps the oil from being able to get underneath the bearing. If the oil can't get underneath the bearing, then in theory it should be able to stay. Of course, if the crank grabs it hard enough, it'll fucking slip it again. But I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. But that's pretty much what I'm experimenting with. I've got now both of the rear ones. I got both of the front ones. And I got the 2 middle ones that still do. And technically, that'll be it. That one fought me badly, because the freaking bolt rounded off, and then I freaking tried the distractors and all sorts of shit trying to get it to come, and it wouldn't. And I ended up having to take the grinder and freaking cut the head of the bolt off carefully, and then get in there and pull it apart and use pair of vice grips to pull the remains of the bolt off of the rod, which really sucked. But it was what I had to do, because, well, that was what I had to do. All right. I guess see you next time.